Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Welcome to Roll for Crit. Today we've got big stories from big publishers, big games, big announcements from all ends of the tabletop industry. It's coming at you right now. Game publisher CMON has announced that they have the rights to and will be producing a board game based on the Last of Us video game franchise. This is following on their board games adapted from other Sony-produced video games, Bloodborne and God of War. We have virtually no information about what this board game will entail, other than the fact that it is, again, based on the Last of Us video game, which is a sort of stealth action game set in a world in which people have become infected, there's a zombie-like virus on the loose, and two characters, your central characters, Joel and Ellie, have to travel across the country to try and do something about it and learn to love each other along the way. In a father-daughter way. One of them is younger, if you haven't played the game. Again, we don't know anything about this one. We don't know details exactly on how it's going to work. Will it be co-op? Will it be competitive? Will it be a two-player game where one person is Joel, one person is Ellie? Are people going to be playing as zombies? Will there be a campaign? Will it be narrative, or will it be more just kind of scenario-based? What would you like to see in The Last of Us, the board game?
Honestly, I think it should be a trader game, because to me, Last of Us is pretty much seeing the last strips of humanity just sort of rotting away, and the question of morality in it. So I think everyone having their own secret goals and people questioning each other and what it would be right or wrong would sort of probably capture the air of the world, so to speak, or at least sort of the desperateness of it. Mm-hmm. Yes, you could do just competitive and everyone going out against each other, but to me, that's not the same thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. I know that just said Last of Us, but there's also now 2 out, so I don't know whether they might pull elements from that as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that is hard to discern right now. They've strictly just said The Last of Us. They haven't said Part 2, but it's not clear if that's just, covering the whole franchise or not. But yeah, I would like it if they did take some of the elements that are more about, like you said, the morality, the narrative aspects of the game. I guess my concern would be that it ends up just being there's zombie miniatures and you're fighting each other and that kind of a thing. But I feel like that they've done a decent job with these other games in our experience, and I think that they could find the elements that make that series special, particularly like the stealth aspect. I always find stealth interesting in a board game, and if there is some kind of even not a full-on campaign, but scenarios, and maybe you'll get cards with choices you have to make on them, something like that. I would really like just a strictly 2-player experience where you have to really cooperate with each other to get through, but I have a feeling they're going to want to go for a higher player count, so you're probably going to be playing as some of the side characters that pop up in that game.
I actually think if they went with a 2-player experience, what you do would be more of it would be an asymmetrical battle, not a cooperative game, in which one person will control a hero unit or maybe pairing, such as Joel and Ellie, while the other side would either control, maybe they decide if they're going to control the zombies, right, maybe one of the other factions.
Yeah, no, that could be interesting for sure. There's a lot of different takes you could take with this game. One thing is for sure, there will be minis. I will stake my life on that.
We're not quite done with CMON Games yet. They run many Kickstarters, which of course have their own ups and downs. This one, however, seems to be a particularly large down. Trudvang, which is a story-based miniature game where you're trying to explore this world and make choices that will have drastic effects, recently had an update that they're going to have a major delay. This is not the usual delays we see with manufacturing not going right, or maybe not exactly hitting that target estimated date, which most Kickstarters don't tend to do. It seems to be that they have finally seen that some of these mechanics just aren't going to work, and they're going to have to rehaul a lot of it. They mentioned how that the story choices they have, it seemed more to be the side quests, not really those big choices they wanted people to feel. And the combat turned out to be pretty predictable once you knew either your hero or the monster you're playing against. It was pretty much just do the same thing that you knew you're going to do. And, they have apologized for this, and they said they will be throwing in a free bonus of these banners that used to be just tokens, but now you're going to have these 3D little banners of points of interests. And the reception is what you would expect. Some people are saying the classic line of a delayed game can be a great game when a rush game can't ever reach that. And while other people want their refunds, it's an annoying process, so I can understand both sides. How do you feel about this, John? Because it is interesting to be like, this isn't just a production issue, which, especially now, I think everyone could be like, yeah, that makes sense, something bad would happen. This is a game component issue, and some people have been wondering, like, why did this pop up now?
It is, I mean, on the one hand, I like aspects of this because I like how transparent they're being, and I think it's very interesting that, like you said, we rarely see a board game delayed because they weren't happy with how it played, or at least we don't hear about that. Usually that's like before they get to the stage where people have heard of it. Usually once it's in people's consciousness, the game's getting ready. So for them to say, hey, it's, we got to go back to the drawing board and rework this thing. Good for them for being able to take that stand, even knowing this would have backlash to it. It is of course concerning because this isn't the first issue CMON has had with Kickstarters in recent times, and or just with their company as a whole. And it's maybe, little things are starting to pile up, I think, that are continuing to make them look kind of bad. I think a lot of people feel like they've looked bad for a long time and they're irredeemable maybe at this point. But so I don't know. It's a tough thing. I'm kind of two minds about it. I think if everything they're saying is true and the game's going to come out in a year and it's going to be a fantastic game, then we'll all be happy that it happened that way. And clearly they have... I'm kind of impressed, to be honest, that they have that level of integrity, because even if this was just an average, okay game, but it was playable, they still could have sold it and made tons of money and never had to tell anyone about any of this, I think.
I think overall the transparency is very nice, in particular, the explaining in detail, not like exact detail, but enough detail, I think, to what mechanics are planned to be changed or whatnot. I get part of the problem though to me is that this does exist though, ignoring anything else that the stuff you mentioned, that this Kickstarter, you assume when it hits Kickstarter, yes, there's going to be changes all the time, maybe some tweaks, but this feels like these are problems that should have been seen before they launched one. Mm-hmm. I guess
it's funny. It's the opposite. We usually joke about CMON games being just a pre-order system, like the game's already finished. But in this case, it's the exact opposite. It's they or maybe it was finished and they just realized now, like they said, oh, this just isn't actually fun. It's strange for sure. It's weird. It's not. I wouldn't call it a good thing overall. It would be preferable if this hadn't happened. Earlier this year, Cards Against Humanity opened a board game cafe in Chicago, aptly named a Chicago Board Game Cafe. Of course, this was just before the pandemic really hit in a big way in the United States, and the cafe was quickly closed thereafter. Now it has been announced that they will be selling the property to the parent company that owns Snakes and Lattes, which is a super popular board game cafe chain. There's some locations in Canada and also one in Arizona. This will be the second Snakes and Lattes location in the United States that is now scheduled to open pretty soon, just in a couple of weeks in October of this year. I thought it was cool when Cards Against Humanity opened this cafe. That company has had some troubles in the recent past, and they don't always do my favorite things, but I sometimes think they do very interesting things. And it seemed like, from all accounts, this was a really high-quality board game cafe with a good food and drinks, but also a great selection and clean, looked nice, looked like almost like an upper scale kind of a board game cafe, if that's a thing that can exist. So it's that's a bummer, because like many other retailers in this country right now, if you were unlucky enough to have a restaurant of some kind opened during this year, you went through those hard times. But Now we'll see Snakes and Lattes take its place, and that's maybe a silver lining. And I wonder if they'll carry on much of the aesthetic and kind of the practices of the Chicago Board Game Cafe, or if they're going to really overhaul it to be more like their other locations.
I assume they want to, if it's going to be more like the other locations, keep the vibe. It's sort of like the same thing when you go to McDonald's or any other chain place. They usually want to try to keep them very uniform so it feels like you're still visiting the same thing unless they have some very weird theme involved in the location. But now that they've opened one in Chicago, I think we need to get a lot more Snakes and Lattes opened up. I think next one should be I don't know, the Jersey area. That's just me.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. We could give a vote for that one. Yeah, I mean it's cool to see them expanding. I mean it's unfortunate that it comes at the expense of this other store, and it's interesting that this was just. I wonder if Cards Against Humanity will take another stab at it, if they'll try to open a cafe somewhere else, and once things have settled down, or if they just maybe lost too much money on this, and this was the best bet they had to get out of it, and they're not going to be interested in that business anymore. There's a lot of things changing around, in terms of the higher ups at that company too these days. So who knows what their priorities are? But you can check out this new Snakes and Lattes if you're in the Chicago area in just a couple of weeks, and I would advise you to wear a mask.
Digimon, one of the many properties that's tried to rival with Pokemon and get a bite of the same audience, has tried to compete in the same arenas, and no other arena has it failed more than the card game. If you don't know, Pokemon is one of the biggest card games out now. Meanwhile, Digimon pretty much has fallen flat multiple times. They have rebooted the card game with multiple different rule sets, some of them not being maybe okay and some not that great. They have started a new booster pack a while back in Japan, and this one actually has been extremely popular, topping their top 10 charts in terms of TCG games, and is now being brought to an international market. Right now, it is coming to the United States with pre-orders starting in November and it being released a few months later. Now, this card game, like I said, has been very popular and actually has a tournament scene even during these COVID times, and from what I can see, it looks very interesting. That being said, I have played multiple of the card games, not all of them, but enough of them. And outside of maybe one of them, I would say I am still a bit hesitant. It's even not including Pokemon. Trying to break into the TCG market, as we've seen even with Transformers, which had backing from one of the biggest companies, it's hard not to survive against Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and Magic.
Even Star Wars failed with Star Wars Destiny. I mean, I don't know if there's any franchise that has the power to survive in that market, really, that isn't Pokemon or Magic. It is really hard. I hadn't even, if you asked me 2 weeks ago if there was a Digimon card game, I would have said, yeah, probably. I just assumed, yeah, there's one. I had no idea there were multiple iterations or anything like that.
Oh, God, yeah. No, that's part of the fun. It's like, all right, this one's from this generation, or this one, oh, this one's rock, paper, scissors. No, this one has This one, though, we'll see what happens. It seems they simplified the way things evolve and looks more like Magic, where there's colorings of red, blue, green, and whatnot. You're not allowed to use Japanese versions of cards with the English ones. And I know some people are going to complain because they may have been just buying the Japanese cards right now, not assuming it'll come over. But what they're actually doing is, I think Japan's already on its third or fourth set, for lack of a better term. And the American one, I think they're actually our first set will be sets 1 and 2. So they're pretty much trying to rush the game so it won't be exact. And I know there's promos and stuff so that's probably, they're just trying to make sure it's fair, I think. And that way, look, just get the English cards so we don't have to worry about if you got the promo War Greymon or something.
Let's worry about the game becoming successful enough that there actually is a tournament scene before we worry about whether or not you'll be able to use your cards in it.
Fair enough.
Borderlands is a multiplayer co-op looter shooter from Gearbox. It's a video game, and a couple years back they released a DLC for Borderlands 2 called Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which was designed so that players would feel as if they were progressing through a Dungeons & Dragons style adventure. Now they are making an actual physical RPG product based on the RPG that they made up in that series, in that DLC pack. It's called Bunkers and Badasses, and it sounds like it's going to basically be Borderlands the RPG. You'll be able to create your own Vault Hunter and progress through levels, roll dice, etc. We haven't had a look at exactly what the rule system will entail, but it seems to involve D20s. There will be one special badass die, not exactly sure how that one functions. You'll be able to buy this as a standalone hardcover book or in a deluxe version which comes with a GM screen, minis and standees, dice of course, a grid board, and also a deck of cards, 100 cards of different guns, because of course that's one of the biggest things in the Borderlands series is you are frequently picking up new guns that have different effects and different power-ups and things like that. And that's probably where my concern will be with this RPG and how that game will translate to the tabletop. It has a great sense of humor and it's a fun game, and they're definitely bringing some of that to the RPG, it looks like. But I wonder if it's going to be a one-to-one, since in that game, I feel like sometimes you're picking up a gun like every 10 seconds. And in most RPGs, you are sticking with one weapon for a while. So are you just going to be like throwing out gun cards every 10 minutes as a GM, or how is that going to work? I don't know. But what do you think? Well, what would you like to see from a Borderlands RPG?
I think I'd want to see not just a deck of cards, but multiple decks. And what it would be something like 3 decks. One deck would just be level, so like you're all level 1, so that's the card you're going to always see. So that one wouldn't be shuffled, really. The second one would be the manufacturer, because they always, then in the games, it's like, oh, the Jacobs always are better for this kind of thing. Or if you want elemental damage, you want this manufacturer. And the third one just being random stats. That way you could be like, look, this is the weapon you found. Do you want it? Something like that. You sort of just customize, build a bunch of weird guns. The one thing I really love about this actually is the badass die, because it's actually a loaded die. So the idea is that you're going to have much better odds rolling the badass die. And I sort of like that idea. Like, instead of an advantage, it's like, look, you get to roll the cheaty die. So you're more likely to get a good thing.
That is kind of funny.
It's not just more odds.
Yeah.
It's sort of funny, but it also sounds really fun to get.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
As maybe an alternative to like advantage, as we say. Or maybe that's the next step. You have double advantage. You get to roll a loaded die now.
Yeah, Nerdvana is the company that's putting out this RPG, and they previously also did a card game based on Tiny Tina's Tea Party or something like that. I don't know. It looks like it'll be, from the brief images we've seen of the book, it looks like it's well put together, and at least in terms of like the look of it looks like a professional piece of work. I'm sure Gearbox will not want to put out something that doesn't look good, because they're a pretty big company.
Let's not forget aliens.
No, let's forget aliens.
Okay,
Colonial Marines.
Now, if they are watching, what they really should do then is, if they want to promote this, they should get the voice actors of their Vault Hunters and have them play it.
That's the way to go. I agree. That's going to be the key to selling this baby.
GAMA, the Game Manufacturers Association, is working on doing a new charity program titled A Game on Every Table. They're trying to work with brick and mortar stores so that when you buy a game, you can spend 50% on a second game to be given to a charity. The Toys for Tots is currently listed there. I'm not sure if other ones will later be included. And the idea is to get a game on every table. And they're hoping that you can work with manufacturers. They're trying to reach out to other brick and mortar stores to make this happen. And tabletop games work very well with different groups of people, especially when we're all stuck inside, not just because it's getting cold. So being able to spread more of these games that, people might not know they'll enjoy. Like, I don't know how many people know that Villainous is the kind of thing, if we're just looking at that kind of stuff. Even if we go into things like Wingspan. And the idea of being able to donate with that and deal with manufacturers so you don't have to pay full price, but they're still being sold at cost, so to speak, I think is a great idea, and we'll get more games to people who might not want to play and give them the chance to play them if they can't afford it, especially in these hard times, at least where we are.
Yeah. The last time I feel like we heard from GAMA was the recent controversy before they ultimately canceled their recent digital convention over like Black Lives Matter issues. So their PR, I think, wasn't in the best place. So I don't know if this is maybe this is part of their like really want to get back on people's good sides. But it's hard to fault them for this. I mean, you really can't knock this idea. It's a charity. It's for a great cause, and it helps out a lot of different groups potentially. And from what I've heard, it sounds like they already have a handful of publishers on board. I know AEG was one listed, so some other big ones. Because I mean, why wouldn't they get on board? It's like it's an easy win. It looks good. It feels good. It helps people. So yeah, it's a nice thing to see, and it helps the hobby, and hopefully it'll make some kids happy this holiday season. And now we'll cover some of the biggest board game releases from the past few weeks. Seven Wonders has its new edition out with brand new artwork, some reworked components, and slightly reworked rules and things here and there. If you're a fan of this drafting card game, you may want to get the newest version or jump into it for the very first time. Arkham Horror 3rd Edition has a new expansion, Under Dark Waves, which adds some new life to the game with new areas in Kingsport and Innsmouth, and of course new scenarios and characters including Ashcan Pete, old favorite Ashcan Pete. And there's more Arkham Horror if you'd like. For the Arkham Horror card game, they have published Barkham Horror, which started out as an April Fool's joke, but is now an actual thing you can buy, a new scenario in which you will play as dog versions of the Arkham Horror investigators and face off against elder cats of some variety. So that's one that you don't want to miss out on. Clank, the deck building game, has a new expansion as well called Adventuring Party. This one comes with a set of characters with their own unique skills, and you can now play the deck building game with up to 6 players. So that's a great one for larger groups if you're able to get one in this time. Detective, the modern crime board game from Portal Games, is a great narrative campaign, story-based deduction game, and they've kind of reworked things. Now they have Detective Season 1, which has 3 standalone cases, all from different time periods and different genres, for you to attempt to solve by yourself or with some friends. The newest Dungeons & Dragons book is available now, Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, a new adventure perfect for these winter months, depending on what climate that you're in. You'll be trying to protect the settlement of 10 towns from the evil Frost Maiden and a team of arcane wizards. What more could you ask for? Escape the Dark Sector is available now. This is the follow-up to Escape the Dark Castle. It's a game that is for 1 to 4 players in which you're progressing through a spaceship and trying to escape and face off against horrors with the aid of dice and the sci-fi weapons you find along the way. Fallout, the board game from Fantasy Flight, has a new expansion, Atomic Bonds. This one transforms the game into a co-op experience with 2 brand new co-op scenarios, plus now the ability to alter some of your look and your clothing options.
Fort from Leader Games is a deck building game all about building forts as kids. It's your job to build the coolest fort in the neighborhood, but some of the kids you hire to help you make that fort may decide to join your opponents later on. Magic's newest set, Zendikar Rising, has released. This is returning to the world of Zendikar, where Nahiri is trying to return Zendikar to its older glory, but at what cost? Mary Posas is from the designer of Wingspan, in which you will all play as monarch butterflies and trying to navigate across the continent of North America and make it back by spawning the most butterflies and making the most points. Marvel's Champions expansion, The Rise of Red Skull, is released. This is, if you can guess, all about Red Skull, but of course includes plenty of other villains, as well as 2 new heroes, Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. Then we have Small World of Warcraft, which is sort of a reskin of Small World with the World of Warcraft theme with a few extra rule changes to really fit that World of Warcraft, world. As well as Tammany Hall, which is from Pandasaurus Games. This is a new edition of the old Tammany Hall, which has some updated art as well as some new meeple. And then finally, we have Truffle Shuffle for the sweet tooth out there. This is all about building the perfect chocolates out from AEG and seeing if you can build the best box of chocolates.
Most of the games that we've just named are ones that we've had the chance to review or will be reviewing shortly. A lot of really, really big ones. You know, there was maybe a slower period, like at the start of the pandemic, I feel, like in the early summer months, but everything's ramping up now. There are tons of really big games to play, whether you're doing the D&D thing, new RPG stuff, or you like traditional. I mean, we loved Fort, Mariposa's, Rise of Red Skull, and Barkham Horror if you're doing the LCG thing. There's a lot to play. It's hard to keep up with it all. One in particular we're going to highlight right now. It is Small World of Warcraft, because we have an extra copy of this game and we are going to offer you, the audience, the chance to win it. We're doing one of our little contests over there on the old website. If you go to rollforcrit.com/contest or check out the description, you can go, and there's multiple ways you can enter, and you can try to win a copy of this game if you're a World of Warcraft or a Small World fan. It'll just be running for a couple of weeks, so take a look at that one and stay tuned for our review later during the week, hopefully, knock on wood. But lots of stuff to look forward to. And I want to add, because this is probably our last chance for a big news video, if you're in the United States, you probably have a little bit of time left still to register to vote. The election's coming up. If you haven't done that, go do it.
You want to get those votes in, after all. I mean, how many game mechanics use voting? You don't want to miss that step. That's crazy if you do that.
We as gamers above anyone else should understand the importance of voting. You don't want your leader to be a spy. So go ahead and do that, and then let us know in the comments down below, which of these games are you looking forward to, and what are your thoughts on everything else we talked about in this episode? Were you a backer of Trudvang Legends? How do you feel? Are you excited about a Last of Us game, or Digimon, or Borderlands? What do you think? Are you gonna check out the new Snakes and Lattes? Where do you want the next Snakes and Lattes to go?
And why is it New Jersey?
So let us know in that comment section. Until next time, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit.
Never miss out by liking and subscribing, and you can also check out more on our Patreon.
We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so follow us there.